Today, I have the one and only Brooke Schnittman on. We are going to find out what her story is all about, how she became an ADHD coach, just all the stuff. So, do me a favor and share this out right now. Just click that little share button under the video, share it out to wherever you're watching from, share it to all of your friends and your family, and stay with us. We will be right back with Brooke Schnittman. We are back. Let me bring Brooke on. Brooke, welcome to the show.
Ken, thank you for having me. That's some introduction you have.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have been blessed. I've had some amazing people on the show, and I can't wait to hear how amazing you are and your story. I see Jeff, the entrepreneur, is watching us. Hello, Jeff. Good to see you. So, Brooke, I started this show 5.5 years ago. And it was really to help me get unstuck in life at the time. And it's worked. But, I just believe that there's incredible healing power in hearing other people's stories of how they went through the doo-doo in life and came out of it and succeeded anyway. So let's start with where you were born and raised.
Well, I was born and raised on Long Island, and since you said Juju, that we're going to keep it PC here, right?
We can keep it as whatever you want. We can do whatever you want. I don't care.
Okay. Yes, born and raised on Long Island, in the Mineola Hospital. I lived in Melville, Long Island, New York, until I moved to Florida, which was 6.5 years ago.
Wow. So I've never been to Long Island, although I have friends that still live in Long Island, actually. Is it on Long Island on Long Island?
I know it's always a tricky one, right?
Yeah.
You're not in the islands, but you're in New York, but you're on Long Island.
But is there like a Long Island, New York zip code, or is it a bunch of little towns out on that island?
Correct. It's a bunch of little towns. I know it's confusing.
And is it really an island, or is it a peninsula?
Good question. It is an island, but there's a bridge that connects, and it's a borough, right? It's one of the 5 boroughs. Geography is not my thing. So ask me math and science, I'll help you out, but social studies, English, not so much.
Right. So you grew up on, what was it like for you growing up on Long Island? And the reason I always ask about childhood, because I feel like there's always a person, a place, an event, a culmination of events or people that kind of push us in the direction that we end up going as adults. So what 100%. Comes to mind when I say that?
Yeah, so my dad owned a school and a camp. He had taken it over from, that sounds terrible. He had run it after my grandfather started it. And
what was it again?
A day camp and a school, cross the country day school on Long Island. It was one of the biggest day camps. And because education was, he had gone to school for education. My mom was a math teacher. So we were a family of educators. And obviously, I'm sure you know where this is going. I went into education. So that really framed and shaped not only my career, but it also shaped some of the situations I had in childhood, good and bad and ugly.
As a child, did you have any I don't know, bad things that you had to get through or overcome, as you know, in childhood?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Did you?
So I did. So the camp had a lot of kids. There were 1,800 kids, and a lot of my neighborhood friends were
Wow.
there. Right. But I also went to the private school there, and I wanted to
Mhm.
be with my friends in public school. So, fourth grade, I'm begging my mom and my dad, please send me to public school. I want to be with my friends who I'm friends with in camp. Finally, they allowed me. I went to public school, and the girls who I was friends with in camp did not want to be my friend in school for whatever reason. So for me,
What?
that's where it all started. That's where all the bullying started and the confusion. And since
Wow.
then, literally until the age of 35, I was bullied, and I'm going to be 40. Um, so it was a turning point in my life, and doing a lot of inner child work now to overcome that as best as possible.
Wow. Wow.
Hmm.
Wow. Wow. Bullied
Hmm.
until the age of 35.
Correct.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I can relate
Yeah.
to a lot of that though. I can totally relate to that. It's,
Yeah.
well, I mean, no, I think I became the bully in my 20s. I'm kidding. I didn't really. I not too much, but I probably have my moments. So w- let's unpack that a little if you don't mind. Um
Sure.
what because I can relate to being bullied. I can relate to being um I mean beat up, all the stuff, right? So
Hmm.
that creates unbelievable feelings of insecurity, not feeling good enough, all of the stuff that goes with that. How did you
Hmm.
handle that? I'm sure that reared its ugly head in your life. How did you handle that? How did you overcome it?
Honestly, not until 5 years ago. What I was trying to do throughout the time that I was bullied in elementary school, middle school, high school, college, professional life is see a therapist. And I was trying to get treated. I was on anti-anxiety medication.
Jeez.
Um, and what I didn't know until I started coaching, even though I've been working with ADHD for 20 years, is that I had ADHD and it was unmanaged.
Wow.
Now, I don't think if I knew that I had ADHD then, that I wouldn't have been bullied because there was more to the story. But yeah, I tried really, really hard to be as dispersed as possible, to kind of like hide. So I would be in many different like clubs so I could have friends, right? Like, so if one group wasn't nice to me, then I had the other group, right? And if that group stopped being nice to me, then I had the other group. So
Yeah.
I was constantly moving to survive. And I've never really spoken about that part before, but in the halls, that was the most dangerous time. And I tried to assimilate as best as possible, but it didn't always work.
Wow. It's
Hmm.
almost like the bullies know.
Yeah,
I think
I
there's like
agree.
an energy. They just
There
know.
is, there is. And then you carry on. Once you become the victim,
Yeah.
then you become the victim, right? And it's that victim mentality. And I don't
Yeah.
think that anyone wants to be bullied, but they can smell it, right? You become insecure, you seek approval, you have these trauma responses that you just want to be their friend, and you're confused on why they don't want to be your friends. And
Yeah.
you don't realize that they're not people who want to be your friends. So stay connected with the people who do want to be your friends. But very
Yeah.
often, the people who do want to be your friends when you're being bullied are not the same people that you want to be friends with.
Yeah.
So it's a
Yeah.
catch 22.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so talk about so you went to school in or on Long Island. Either way, it
Mm-hmm.
was Long Island. And you graduated high school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You ended up
Went
going to
to,
college.
I went to undergrad at Penn State, and I
Oh,
did general education. So growing up, I either wanted to be a fashion designer or a teacher. And coming from two parents in education, my mom said, "You're not going to make any money as a fashion designer, be a teacher." I'm like, okay. So I did. And I went to school thinking I was going to follow her suit, be a math teacher. But I realized how many classes in math there were above calculus. So I said, never mind. So I did general education, elementary.
Yeah.
And what I realized is that we took one class in special education. I said, I'm interested to learn more about this. Plus, I don't know if I'm going to get a job as a general education teacher right away. So let me go straight into my master's and go get a special education master's degree. So I did. I went to NYU and got my master's in students with disabilities, which is special education. Yeah. And then the day after, I started teaching and got a job on Long Island. And I was a special education teacher, then turned into an assistant director of special education and did that for 15 years.
Wow. Wow. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. I would have said to your mother, because I believe that anything is possible, I would have said, tell Tommy Hilfiger that. Because
exactly.
Right. Exactly. Or I don't know, Ralph Lauren or any number of so it's this is no look, I know people are well intentioned, but I just the stories I hear about people saying, well, so and so told me my dreams are just not possible. So
I know. What? But you know what? She told me to be a teacher, right? And when I look back on it, I obviously didn't really have a backbone back then, and I sought approval from my family, from my friends.
Sure.
Never. Yeah. And at the same time, what I learned from that was what I'm doing now. So it helped, right? Yeah. I'm not upset. I'm not a fashion designer, honestly, but I would never tell my kids not to be something that they want to be at this point.
Right. You can do anything. Anything.
And
that leaves everything is possible.
Literally. And with ADHD, if you don't follow your passion, you're not going to succeed. So that could be a hobby that you make into a career. Yeah. And so I got my tenure, which is the golden handcuffs.
What is that? What?
It means
as an educator.
Correct. So it's the golden handcuffs, right? Yeah. And I was making good money, and my mom would always say, "Oh, this is a great job if you're going to be a mom."
Yeah.
But what people don't really know is that teachers don't just work from 8 to 3. They're working all night, planning, writing papers. For me, it was IEPs,
grading papers.
Grading papers, planning, like there's just so much. So I was spending like 12 hours a day doing that. And it was definitely for me not a job that was conducive to being a parent. But that's not why I left. I ended up just wanting the next thing. I always measured myself as a hard worker. And that's what I identified with. I almost was like addicted to the reward of working hard and people noticing.
Yeah. It's funny. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law are here. They just got in last night from Ohio, and she's a teacher. my sister-in-law is, and she's been she's done it forever. There's like no vacation. There's no time off. It's insane.
No, we work for 181 or 186 days a year technically, but you don't. That's not true. Yeah. You're working on vacations, you're working on the weekends. You can't just leave your job at home once you come home to your kids. You're still working.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. So you went through, and the tenure is what? How long is that? 10 years?
You would think, 15, right? But 15? That's actually 3 years at the time.
So how many?
3.
3. Wow.
So I was there for 3 years at the school, and then you have to do a bunch of lessons. They have to observe you, and if you qualify, then they'll grant you tenure, which means that it's really hard to fire you unless they go through extreme measures. And now the rule is 4 years in the school system in New York. To tenure.
Whoa.
But anyway, I left my tenured position and I moved into an administrative role and started my tenure all over again. But 2 years into it, I realized that's not what I wanted to do.
Okay. So And let's be very, very clear. You at this point, you had a master's degree in
students with disabilities. I
okay.
also then, I skipped a bunch of stuff. So I went to Long Island University after that, and I said, you know what, I want to just like rack up my degrees and certifications. Again, not knowing I had ADHD at the time, because I
Right.
was bored. I'm like, what can I do next?
Right.
So
Right.
I had 15 math credits that I got from Penn State and from high school. So I only needed 30 to have a math degree. So I went to Long Island University and started racking up the math classes. And I
Sure.
was literally like 2 classes away when my administrator tapped me on my back and he said, I think you would make a great administrator, and I want you to be the IAP coordinator. So I said, okay. So I pivoted, I stopped, and then
Wow.
I applied to get my school building administration and school district leadership degree from LIU Post. It took 2 years, and I tried to fast track it as much as possible. I got my test ahead of time, all of that. And then I used that certification to then be assistant director of special education.
All right. So you oh gosh, okay. So I'm trying to guess how old you would have been at this point. 30-ish, less than
Yes.
30 years old.
Yeah. Yes, I
Wow.
was. Yeah.
Okay. So at some point, and we're going to get into this ADHD thing. Grant Cardone is a good friend of mine. And one of the things he says is I believe everybody's got ADHD on some level, especially entrepreneurs. I know so many entrepreneurs, but anyway, we're going to get into that. So let's talk about, um, where you had a moment. I'm assuming there was some kind of a moment where you were like, I can't do this anymore.
Yes.
Okay.
So when I was an assistant director of special education, I realized that I was pretty much doing the same stuff that I did as an IEP coordinator, but
Okay.
I had a terrible boss. I had a terrible colleague. Both bullied me, and
Gee.
the district that I was in was the best district for special education, which was great. So we were doing everything that we could. But the teachers didn't like the administrators from way back when. That was a thing that was
Yeah.
there. And I remember when I got hired, on the day that I went there and I was approved by the Board of Education, I cried because I was like, why am I leaving a district that I love? This is before I became the assistant director of special education, to come to this district. Why am I doing it? And I did anyway. So like in my gut, I knew it wasn't the right decision, but my ego made me do it because I said, I need to be better. I need to get that next position. And they didn't have that
Was there
position.
a pay raise and all of that involved?
Right. I was working in a school district that was one of the highest paying school districts in the country.
Oh, wow.
And they had offered me, when I was an IEP coordinator, they had offered me an assistant director role a year after to replace the boss that I had. But then the Board of Education didn't approve it because I wasn't certified as an administrator yet. I had another year. So they hired someone else who was a special education teacher to be my boss, and I was teaching him how to do my job and his job.
Wow.
And I'm like,
And
you know
his
what?
job.
And I said, no, like that was my ego. I said, if he can do it, I can do it, and I'm
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
So I left and on very good terms. And they had actually asked me back after I moved to Florida to go back into that role. And I said no. So that was a
Right.
turning point for me too. But I went to this other district for 2 years and I was pushing paper. I was managing frustrated teachers who wanted to get their students classified, parents who wanted to get their students classified, being bullied by my boss and my colleague, just not getting the emotional support. And I wasn't interested because I wasn't working directly with the kids. It was all moving paperwork. I'm like, this is not why I became a teacher.
Yeah. No. No.
So I gave my notice, and at the end of the school year, I was either going to look for another job in New York, which had to be a director of special education because you can't move linear, or I was going to move to Florida and start my own career. And the reason Florida is because my dad had moved to Florida, my sister had moved to Florida, my mom was a snowbird, so everyone was moving there, and it felt better living there.
Yeah. What part of Florida?
South Florida. So I moved to Boca, and then now I'm in Boynton Beach with my husband, 2 stepsons, and 2-year-old daughter.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So okay. Talk about ADHD. When you first, what are some of the most common symptoms of having it? And then when did you discover you were ADHD?
Yeah, so the most common symptoms of ADHD is distractibility, hyperactivity, impulsivity, that what you think of the boy in the classroom, right? And that's why they usually get diagnosed before women, because they're the ones who are outwardly, generally hyperactive. But you could also be hyperactive internally. You could also have racing thoughts, and your mind can be all over the place. That is hyperactive. But teachers don't generally see that from the outside, and that's why women can not get diagnosed until later in life.
So if I were to, in the middle of this interview, go, hey, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee, I'll be right back, keep talking. that would be, I'm just kidding.
No. So back to what you said about Grant Cardone, it's so common that people say that everyone has ADHD, and the truth is,
I don't think he says everyone. He says a lot of entrepreneurs.
A lot of entrepreneurs do have ADHD. Yeah. In fact, 35% of entrepreneurs have ADHD, and that's only the ones who know they have ADHD. So I would assume more actually have ADHD. But to be classified with ADHD, you need to have, when you're younger than 12, 6 out of the 9 symptoms of ADHD for 6 or more months, and in 2 or more areas of your life. And it can't be conditional. It can't be because, your parents are getting divorced or you're being bullied. So the person who's evaluating has to rule out any other possibilities like anxiety, depression, ASD, OCD, bipolar, borderline personality. So there's a lot of different coexisting conditions sometimes that occur with ADHD or are separated from ADHD that might look like ADHD. And then if you're over the age of 12, you have to have 5 or 9 of the symptoms, and they had to manifest before the age of 12. So you do a bunch of surveys if you're going to go through a psychiatrist, and the people, and you give it out to your friends and family who've known you from before the age of 12 as well.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And so when did you discover that 35? Is that what you said? What?
Yeah, it's crazy. I know.
How did you how did that come about?
Right. So I was diagnosed with anxiety all my life, from psychiatrists, psychologists, and I had started my ADHD coaching business. Okay. I then gone for certifications in ADHD coaching, life coaching, parent coaching, all that. And then I moved in the direction of working with adults. I was working with students previously, and then I started online in 2019.
Okay.
Just because it was more efficient for adults.
Yeah, sure.
And I noticed that when I was trying to pay attention to the client, which I was able to, when the session was over, it was hard for me to shift and do my notes and then come back and meet with my next client. So the sustaining and shifting attention was really difficult for me. And then I started seeing like the adult pieces kind of line up. Like I was a serial dater, and I like to constantly move to different places and like stay busy. And I'm like, you know what? I'm starting to see these symptoms, and I never put it together when I was a child, even when working with students with ADHD. But I think I was always attracted to students with ADHD because I had it and I didn't know it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So you discovered that you had it. What are how do you deal with that? when you discover that you are ADHD?
Okay, so my story was very different than other people's because I was already in the profession, right? And I
Yeah,
also
right,
was already, I actually had already been coached for a year going through a group coaching program. So I learned a lot about myself, how I was showing up for myself, how I was showing up for others,
right.
executing larger tasks. So I started to get into these positive routines and eliminate some of the negative routines and beliefs that I had prior to being coached. So at age 34, I was being coached. And then once I learned I had ADHD, I decided to go on Adderall with the advice of my psychiatrist, just to see what type of impact that would have on me. And it actually did have a really positive impact immediately. It helped me to sustain my attention for longer times, shift my attention, find my words, and even improve my confidence more. But I always tell people that when they learn that they have ADHD, find your people, learn about it, soak it all up, go on social media, find people there, like go on to different resources like CHADD, CHADD, or ADDA.org if you're an adult with ADHD, Attitude Magazine, ADDITUDE, or go on my website, Coaching with Brooke, with an E, and learn about it and find your people. And then once you start understanding yourself a little bit more, then decide how you want to move forward. Do you want a coach? Do you want a therapist? Do you want to meet with someone and consider medication? It's a very personal decision. I generally recommend after you find your people that you do some behavioral work first so you can learn the skills. You can learn how to use your ADHD tendencies to enhance your potential,
Mm,
how to enhance your strengths, right? Just like any person, how to kind of delegate or eliminate your weaknesses,
yeah,
and then gain confidence by doing small things week after week. So I usually recommend behavioral, whether it be with me or a therapist or, an executive function coach or whatever. And then once you get those skills under your belt, then decide whether or not you want to go the medication route too. It's usually best when you do medication and behavioral because it's a triage effect.
wow,
Mm-hmm.
wow. So do you refer, I guess you refer people out to psychiatrists when necessary, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
How what are some of the things that if somebody thinks they may be ADHD, I'm sure I have a touch of it. But I don't even take aspirin, so I hate drugs. But but what are some of the things that people um what are some of the things they should be looking for in themselves if they think they have ADHD?
Yeah. So everyone has executive functions, which are the prefrontal cortex of their brain
Yep.
here.
Yep.
And some people struggle in one or more areas for a period of time. That doesn't mean that they have ADHD. So you could have difficulty with organization, you could have difficulty with prioritization, you can have difficulty with um, initiation. But again, it doesn't mean that you have ADHD. So
Right.
if you do have ADHD or suspect you have ADHD, you could start out with an online test, right? And I don't say that that is going to be the indicator if you have ADHD or not. Okay,
Right.
so I have a test on
Right.
my website under resources. It's an ADD test for adults. It's called the ASRS, and you can also find it online if you Google it. And that will just give you some insight onto what is potentially possible. Then I
Right.
would take that and bring it to a psychiatrist or a neuropsychological evaluator and say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. This is the result of this informal assessment. I think that I have ADHD. I would like to find out if I do. Can you
Sure.
help me?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. 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 So where did things so once you found out that you were ADHD, and is that the right way to say it, that or that you
Yeah.
have a
It's,
I don't
I'm not offended either way. It depends on also like where you live. Some people say, I'm an ADHD person, or I have ADHD. So like it could
Right.
be disability first or person first. In
Got it.
Long Island, in the United States, in the school system, we're usually person first, like a woman with ADHD or a child with ADHD. But out in the world, some people feel more secure saying the disability or disorder first and identifying with that.
Got it. Got it. So either way, when you discovered this and you started addressing it, how did things change for you, and how dramatically did they change?
They didn't really change that much
Okay.
because, as I mentioned, I was already receiving coaching. So I already discovered myself and discovered my strengths and weaknesses and started the tools that I needed. And I was working with clients with ADHD, and the tools that I was suggesting and working with them, I was using myself. So that definitely helped, right?
Yeah.
The medication, though, when I started the medication, that was just an extra tool, if you
Yeah.
will,
Sure.
that helped me in sustaining my attention for longer periods of time, to be able to shift my attention. And I felt more confident because there's this chemical change in your brain when you're taking medication. It connects the synapses of your brain and it helps with the reuptake of dopamine and neurotransmitters. So
Right.
there is scientific research and evidence that stimulants is one of the best things that you can do for ADHD. So 80% of people can actually take stimulants, and 20% of people can't because of heart conditions, or they just have adverse reactions to it, or it doesn't work.
Right. What the stimulant is what?
So there's different stimulants out there. I take Adderall, there's Concerta, there's
Okay.
Ritalin. So Ritalin and Adderall
Right.
are the two big
Yeah.
stimulants for adults. Also Vyvanse.
Got it. What about
Mhm.
coffee?
Coffee is a stimulant, and that's a
I
great
know.
question that you asked
Yeah.
because I just did a reel on this. So
Yeah.
I used to drink so much coffee before I knew I had ADHD.
Wow.
Okay, so do you know Andrew Huberman?
Who?
Andrew Huberman, he's a podcaster. He's a neuroscientist for Stanford University. He has the
I've heard
podcast
the
Huberman
name, I
Lab.
think.
So
Yeah.
he talks about stimulants like coffee or soda or sugar or chocolate, or those things are a stimulant, and they can help you with your ability to focus, but for very short periods of time.
Yeah.
Very short periods of time. So with coffee, you know that you get highs and lows. So it's
Yeah.
not this like baseline of getting dopamine.
Yeah.
When you take a stimulant, usually what happens is because of the reuptake, it's managing your dopamine levels 10x, like your friend Grant Cardone,
Yeah.
of coffee and chocolate and sex and nicotine
Yeah.
and all of these stimulants
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you could take. So that's why I do think that if that's something that, I wouldn't be afraid of it if you're someone who's looking to try that. And I have no affiliation with, any medications. It's just I've had a good experience with it. My
Yeah.
husband, my two stepsons.
Yeah. Wow. So you said things didn't dramatically change for
They
you.
did not dramatically change because
Okay.
if you so there's a different, like an umbrella, right? There's a spectrum of your ADHD. So you could be
Sure.
mild, moderate, or severe.
Right.
So I was diagnosed as ADHD combined type moderate, which means that my symptoms are in the middle,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I was trained as a young kid from my parents that you
Yeah.
come home, you do homework, you do your disciplines, you play your sports, you study. Like I learned all of those things because they ingrained it in me. And then when I was coached, I finally learned some self-esteem because I received tools for a year on how to execute things. So
Wow.
because I had all of that under my belt, I would say that I already started learning, even though I didn't know I had ADHD.
Right. Right.
Right,
Wow.
right now, what occurs for me is that I'm a parent, new parent, newly married, so there's new problems.
Yeah.
So because of that, sometimes my ADHD symptoms can be exacerbated, like lack of sleep, emotional regulation issues that I didn't have before I was in a relationship with children.
Yeah. Right. Right. What about the people that just say, I mean, we just had a comment. I've been told I got ADHD. However, since I was raised in Mexico and we never treated it, it has never affected me because I was never aware of it. I just learned to live life. Um,
You don't
what
know what you
about,
don't know, right?
right, right. So what about people who, I mean, are there doubters about ADHD?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
In the
I
UK, they
would
didn't even
imagine.
recognize ADHD in adults, I think until 2011.
Right,
So there
right.
are a lot of doubters out there. People think that everyone has ADHD.
Yeah,
There are psychiatrists who don't understand ADHD, so will diagnose anxiety and or depression. So yeah, there's doubters, and there's also people who say, well, why do you care about a label? Like, who cares? It's your symptoms. And I understand, I can see their point, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
everyone, regardless if you have a label or not, your
right,
symptoms can manifest differently, regardless of what you have. So you have to treat
right,
the symptoms.
right.
But sometimes the label, like I've had people come to me crying that they didn't get diagnosed with ADHD because they thought they had ADHD and they thought that would explain everything to them.
Yeah,
And I said, whoa, whoa, like, but some people, once they get that label, they feel like it's not them and it's their diagnosis, or they separate the two. So there's a lot of people who don't believe in ADHD. There are people who think everyone has ADHD, but it's a real neurological disorder. And yes, it's one of the most popular and well-known neurological disorders.
sure, sure. So, coachingwithbrooke.com, you said, has a lot of resources and
Mhm.
people can test and see where they are with it. What is the you said you just did a reel. I love that. I love that actually. So what's your overarching message to the world that you want people to hear, to understand? I mean, we're my podcast is in the top 10% in the world, so you have a big stage right now. What do you think you would like the world to know, that what's your message?
You're not alone. There is a whole community of people out there who get you and understands you, but find your people, because disorders can be so isolating. And sometimes you were taught as a kid not to share and not to speak up, that you should be a certain way or you shouldn't be doing this. So lean into your gut, because very often we are very intuitive, but we don't listen to our gut as ADHDers because of those negative messages. Lean in, find
Mm,
your community, and get the help through the community, whether it be a friend, a family member, a coach, a therapist, a psychiatrist, someone who
mm.
truly gets you, and find a buddy that you can really just connect with along the way, like an ADHD ally.
Wow. Dominguez Jose says, I like that. Symptoms manifest when you know what you have. I always felt different and just a different energy. My son now has autism and my life has changed completely. Wow.
Mm-hmm. So interestingly enough, I just got off a call right before this with a family, and ADHD is very hereditary, and autism, 50 to 75% of people with autism also have ADHD.
Wow.
So again, it's a spectrum, right? So some
Yeah.
people you don't know or think that they have autism.
Right.
All right. And
Right.
some people, it's so obvious that they're like the classic poster child, just like with ADHD. So yes, ADHD is very hereditary, and so is autism.
Wow. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So, Brooke, what else do you want to say to the world?
That I was just talking to a researcher. Again, know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
75% of people in the workplace have an invisible disability.
Wow.
75%.
Wow. Yeah. I believe it.
So find your people, embrace your strengths, and know that if everyone has weaknesses, right? But it's a matter of what you do with your strengths that matters.
Wow.
And just be persistent and take action. Trust yourself, because you can literally take anything and make a career out of it. So find your passion, find what works for you, find your people, and I promise you, you're going to have your bad days, you're going to have your good days, just like everyone else, but you will thrive, and you can thrive with the right support.
Wow. That's powerful. 75%.
Invisible disabilities. So that's the neurodivergent population. That's people with like physical disabilities. Those are people with what's the other group of people? But technically, this is like the majority of these people are neurodivergent. So, and a very popular term right now is neurodiversity. That means that our brains work differently from one another. So, you could have, 75%. Isn't that incredible?
That's
so
unreal.
a lot of them are in the closet, right? Meaning they won't share that they have something. But when you're in the workplace and you're afraid to look different or act different, just know that 3 out of 4 people next to you are going to have an invisible disability. You're not alone.
Yeah, it's true. I believe it. Totally believe that. So, Coaching with Brooke with an E, for those of you listening and can't see it scrolling across the bottom of the screen, www.coachingwithbrooke with an E.com is where.
And I appreciate that. I also have a lot of free tips on Instagram. There's a big page that I have there, and every day we're throwing out tips. So you might be able to find what you're looking for on that page as well.
That's so awesome. I know you have a hard out here in a few, so I want to be respectful of that and wrap this up. But is there anything else you would like to say to the audience before we end this?
Just thank you for showing up. Knowing that Ken was going to talk about this, you're doing your due diligence in trying to find support for yourself, right? So you're putting one foot in front of the other and you're taking action, and that's where you're going to see the biggest results, even if it's not right away.
Amen. Everybody, and I'm sure that on your website, is your social media linked from your website?
It is.
So make sure you go over to coachingwithbrooke.com with an E at the end of her name. So it's coachingwithbrooke.com, and follow her on Instagram and all of her social media platforms. Check out her resources and reach out to her if you feel like she can help you. It's
Thank
awesome.
you, Ken.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I hope we broke some walls today.
What's that?
I hope we broke some walls today.
Well, you never know. I mean, it's reaching. I always look at it like, hey, if we can reach one person and have a positive impact in that person's life, then we've done our
It's worth
job.
it.
Yeah.
100%.
So, Brooke, thank you so much. And everybody watching, thank you so much for watching, hanging out with us. Make sure you go to coachingwithbrooke.com and check out everything she's got going on, and follow this lady on Instagram. Brooke, thank you. I'm going to end the live stream. Everybody watching, if you have not shared this out, there is still time for you to redeem yourself and you can share this out now. So
can I share it out now?
You can share it out anytime you want. Anytime you want.
Perfect.
Thank you all so much, Brooke. Thanks again. I appreciate you coming on. Stay with me. I'm going to wrap this up and we'll chat here in a second. So we will see you all later. Have an awesome, awesome weekend. Happy holidays. All of the stuff.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.